Welcome to Standing on the Edge. This is your host, Randy Soplata. Today is Friday, March 25th, and today we will be talking about prepare on the edge of the coin. We also have the topic of crisis checklist during the Think Like the Rich section. And today's personal story will be if you do nothing, you are doomed to repeat history. Finally, we'll finish off the show with what would happen if. By the way, if you like the content presented here and in other videos of mine, do me a favor, hit that like button, smash it hard or soft, it doesn't matter. Make sure you get that thumbs up as well, and then subscribe to the channel so that we can ensure that Facebook and YouTube keep me around for quite a while. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for the edge of the coin. And welcome back to the show. The Edge of the Coin is brought to you by the CS Media Group. We provide the outstanding talent and you get the extraordinary entertainment. The Edge of the Coin is a segment that shows us a way of opening up our mindsets to allow us to explore both sides of any situation. We're going to jump right into today's topic, which is this. Prepare. Prepare. Now, this segment here goes along, it's many times that I have done this before. And it's always one of those things where you really have to go ahead and, you literally have to do it. I mean, there's nothing in life that will work for you. Very well, at least, unless you prepare for it. I mean, let's take, for example, my wife loves to bake, absolutely loves baking. If she could go ahead and do it, she would go ahead and bake, a heck of a lot of time. So many times throughout the week, so many times throughout the day, it doesn't matter. She would be in the kitchen constantly if she could, and absolutely loves to go ahead and do so. But she can't just jump right into the kitchen and go, okay, I'm baking bread today. Boom, let's go ahead and do it. Throw stuff together and toss it in the oven and go from there. It doesn't work that way. It doesn't, because you got to have the right ingredients first. Then you got to have the right equipment. And once you got that, then you got to make sure that the temperature is correct. And finally, you got to find some way to go ahead and time what it is that you're doing. These are all extremely essential things to make sure that what's going on in any endeavor is going to work best for you. I mean, think about it. If I were to get there, and I'm not a baker, I am not a baker at all. I mean, I can read the directions on the side of a cake box, and I can mix things up, and I can go ahead and put it into a particular pan and throw it in the oven. I can do that. That's not a big deal. But I can't just whip up these magnificent creations like some bakers can go ahead and do. They're really professional and just and seem like it's effortless to them. To me, I mean, I'm going way off. I'm sweating like mad. I'm trying to figure out what's going to happen, if I'm doing it right, if it's actually going to turn out however it's going to happen. It's just one of those things that works that way. And so if I am completely unprepared, it's going to turn out as a disaster. Literally a disaster. And I can't help it because I didn't do the proper planning. I didn't do the proper preparations. Okay. I mean, I have learned now, mind you, I am also, I'm a good cook. I will go ahead and say that I don't bake well, but I'm a good cook. So I can go ahead and do with food most of the time what some masterful bakers can go ahead and do with their baking creations. But even so, I already know too that number one, if I don't have the proper ingredients, I can't make what I want. Plain and simple. Okay. If I need to make a roux, and for those of you that don't know what a roux is, basically it's flour and oil that's all mixed together, kind of almost burnt, but not quite, but it's cooked up, and it becomes a very thick brown sauce. Very thick, trust me. And if I leave it at just flour and oil and I mix it together and I do nothing else with it, number one, it tastes horrible. Number two, it's a gloppy, gloopy mess that you can't do anything with. And number three, nobody's going to even want to like looking at it, let alone try to go ahead and put it in their mouth. It's not going to work that way. So if I don't have the right type of flour, it's not going to work. I mean, I can't use bread flour into this roux. I mean, I probably could, but it's just not going to work quite as well as all-purpose flour or even self-rising flour as doing it that way. Okay, then of course I got to put the right amount of oil. Now I can't just go ahead and splash oil and go, okay, let's do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna make roux and we're gonna spread it over the meat and do whatever. No, you can't just do that. You got to measure out the proper ingredients, or at least be able to eyeball it correctly. Excuse me. If you just go pouring the gallon jug of oil all over it and go doop, 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 yeah, I think that's enough. It's not going to work for you at all. Then, of course, you got to go ahead and mix it all up until it's the proper consistency. So you got to pay attention to what's going on while you're doing it. At the same time, you got to turn on the heat so that the heating element is getting warmed up while you're doing this, because it's done in a saucepan. So you're mixing all this up together. You're heating it up at the same time. So it's combining the elements together and it's becoming very nice and congealed and thick. And really, you're stirring it the whole time so it doesn't burn at the same time, but it doesn't stay a gloppy mess. And by the time you're finished with it, it comes out really, really nice, especially if you add a little bit of garlic and onion and maybe some pepper to go along with it as well. Throw on a few extra herbs while you're at it there. And this is how you do things. Now, when you're baking, you do the exact same thing. Okay, you go ahead and make sure you got your. Let's say you want to go ahead and bake a cake. You want to make sure, number one, you got flour. Number two, you want to go ahead and make sure you got sugar. Then you want to make sure you got the other little tiny ingredients that go along with it, like maybe a little bit of baking powder, a little bit of possibly yeast, depending on how big you want that cake to go ahead and rise. Most likely, no, not with the yeast. That's more for bread. But you want to go ahead and have a little bit of salt. You want to have a little bit of flavoring that goes up inside of there. You want to make sure you got the water or the milk that goes along with it, sometimes both. An egg to go ahead and drop inside of there to help hold it together while you're doing that. And then you go ahead and make sure, like I said, you got the right size pan. Because if you want to go ahead and make an 8-inch round cake, you're not going to put it in a 13-inch square or rectangular pan. It's just not going to come out the same way. It really won't. So you have to prepare. You can't just put things together in a few seconds most of the time, and certainly not have it come out well. However, if you've already prepared, you know in advance you're going to, at some point in the near future, do this cake. You're making sure you've got your list of ingredients taken care of. You've got plenty of flour. You got plenty of milk. You got plenty of eggs. You got plenty of sugar. You got plenty of the other little tiny things that go along inside it there, so you can do exactly what you want. And then, of course, you got to have the measuring spoons, unless you're really, really, really good at eyeballing things. Excuse me. And the bowl to mix it in, and of course the pan to go ahead and put it in afterwards to go ahead and bake. And then hopefully you're going to have a flame of some sort or a heating element that's going to work at the time that you need it to, because that's also very important to do so. So once you've got all of that stuff prepared and you know it's going to work, then you can just go, okay, doop, 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 grab. Here we go. Let's put it together. Flop, flop, flop. Everything's all in. Boom, clean, moving it up, and slap, it goes into the oven. And 30, 45 minutes later, boom, you've got a wonderful little cake that's going on. Now, I make it sound very super simple. Again, I am not a baker, not by any means. So when I say this, I'm just doing this based off of observation of people that do it well. All right. But if you didn't have the preparations beforehand, it would not work. It would take what might normally take you, if you got everything ready together in the first place, it might take you an hour and a half all total, from opening up the first ingredient to pulling that cake out of the pan after it's cooled. It might take an hour and a half. If you don't have everything prepared, we're looking at probably around a 6 to 7 hour job, sometimes more, depending on whether or not you have to go to the store to pick up what you need. Now, again, I'm using this in baking terms. That's because I'm very familiar with it. My wife loves to bake, so I've watched her constantly while she's doing these things. I mean, she's a wizard when it comes to this. And I tried to go ahead and figure out how it is that she can go ahead and do these things, and I can place that same type of preparation into other businesses of mine, because this is exactly how a well-run business works. Before you even start a business, you got to know that sometime in the future you're going to have a business. Then you got to know what kind of business you want to have. Then you got to know if it's going to even be something that people will want, or you have to create the need for people to want it. Once you got that done, then you got to be able to go ahead and figure out how to put it together. And finally, at the same time, be able to let people know that it's coming, so that they will go ahead and want some of what you got once it's ready. But that's all part of the preparation stage. That's part of the preparation stage. If you don't know what you're doing, if you don't have an idea of what you want, you're not going to do it well. Not at all. And that's why I'm bringing this up today, because so many people want to treat their lives like we are using the internet. I want it now. I believe there was a line from, I think, the original Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. One of the characters named Veruca was always, I want it now, Daddy. I want it now. I want one of those golden geese. I want those chocolate, those Oompa Loompas or whatever they are. And I want it now. Well, we're in a day of instantaneous gratification. And unfortunately, there's a lot of stuff still that we can't get instantaneously. There was another movie that I watched way back when, I believe it was the second Back to the Future film, where, and this was kind of funny, where the mom went ahead and took out a little pizza, and it was literally about the size of a quarter or a $50 or something like that. Placed it in the middle of a tray, stuck it in the microwave, hit the instantaneous hydrate button came on it, and ding, open right back up again. Here we have this huge old steaming 12-inch pizza that you can go ahead and eat from there. I mean, talk about instantaneous. That would be fabulous if that was the case. But think for a moment about the processes and the preparation that went into making that little pizza. Think about the preparations and the processes that went into making that hydrator, that went into getting it into your home. This is what so many people don't realize. And so when we as a society make instantaneous decisions and instantaneous snap judgments on things that we see, hear, or feel, 9 times out of 10, we're getting it either misrepresented, incorrect, or completely off the ball, to where it's a disaster. I mean, it's just not going to work at all in those terms. So you have to use what I think is extremely limited these days. And those of you over the age of 50 with me, or right nearabouts, you'll understand exactly what I'm talking about, which is using the gray matter in between your ears. Common sense is severely lacking in what's going on today. And unfortunately, it seems that as we hear the instantaneous news that's going on throughout the world of any kind, we automatically rush to the worst. We automatically go, oh my God, I got to go ahead and get things right now. And 9 times out of 10, if you had already taken a moment previous and gone ahead and made your little checklist, which we're going to go into in the next segment here in a few minutes, and you've gone ahead and decided this is where I think things are going, but I can use these exact same items in a second list or a third list if necessary, so that way they're there no matter which way things happen to go. It's going to be so much easier for me. And this is what's called preparation. Now, the best way to prepare, like I said beforehand, is number one, to think ahead. You got to use your common sense. You have to. If you don't have common sense, God help you. All right. It's not something that can be taught from somebody else to you. You got to figure it out yourself. Okay. I can talk till I'm blue in the face, and I have talked till I'm blue in the face to my daughters. God bless them. God love them. I keep telling them, look, if you think ahead, if you do these things in this order, it's going to make it so much simpler for you. And they're going, but why? When all I have to do is look things up. Why? When all I have to do is take things out, put it in the microwave. Why? When all I have to do is go ahead and speak into a microphone and it does it for me. And I have to go, you know what? Those are all great things if they're working properly. But what happens if the power goes out? What happens if the power goes out and you can't speak into your phone because you've run out of power and can't charge it up? What happens if the power's going out? You can't pull up a recipe and you don't know how to make anything, let alone boil water to do anything of anything. How are you going to survive? You got to go ahead and start learning these proper skills and these basic skills. And those are all in preparation for anything that might happen. Now, another way I was looking at it was when I was growing up, my mom didn't know how to do this, but she had friends that did. She had her friends show me when I was 13, 14, 15 years old, right in that area, and it was about 2 to 3 years that they were doing it. They showed me simple things on how to take care of a vehicle. For example, they showed me how to go ahead and top off the air in a tire. They showed me how to change the tire. They showed me how to go ahead and change the oil, as well as to go ahead and fill up the oil if necessary and any other fluids that were going on. They showed me how to test a battery to see if it was working or not. They showed me how to jump a battery off of a car. They showed me how to go ahead and change a serpentine belt without using a serpentine belt. Now, these are things that I have very rarely used throughout my adult lifehood, but I've used them enough to go, thank you, Lord, for having those people come in and show me just what to do if I ever had an emergency. Because if, God forbid, if this had happened to me when I'm driving at 70 miles an hour on the interstate, I would be stranded. I would have no idea what to do. And if I was in a place with no cell phone service, I couldn't even go ahead and call 911 or the hero people that come out, or even my insurance company and say, hey, I need help, that kind of thing. If I didn't know what to do, then I would seriously be in trouble. But knowing what to do, even if I don't need it, is 100 times better than not knowing what to do and being caught in the heat of the moment like a deer in the headlights. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to think like the rich. And welcome back to the show. Think Like the Rich is brought to you by Mama's Decadence, offering luxurious refreshment for your body inside and out. You need to treat your body and that of your lover to a bit of luxury from Mama's. We have the next holiday coming up very soon also. I believe Easter's coming up here in just a few weeks, so we definitely want to go ahead and make sure we got something for that. By the way, Mama's is hosting a sock drive at the moment that's going to benefit the homeless people of Atlanta, Georgia. She's looking for new or unworn black or white socks. Those are what's preferred. So we can go ahead and make sure that if nothing else, we have clean, dry socks to be able to put on the people that need it most, that have no home. The event's going to be on June 18th, and if you want more information about the event or where to go ahead and send those socks, just telephone 470-554-2134. You can leave a text for me there also, or you can email Heather at mamasdecadence@gmail.com. Now that's decadence, DECADENTS, decadence@gmail.com. Think Like the Rich is a segment designed to help everyone think past their circumstances and encourage a different course of action. Today's topic is crisis checklist. Crisis checklist. Never, ever, ever let a good crisis go to waste. Now, I mentioned earlier in the last segment that we are a society that wants everything right now. And we literally make snap spot judgments at the moment when we hear something, anything out of the ordinary, and decide whether it's great or not great for us, and sometimes whether or not to even worry about it. because that also is a spot judgment. Now, if you think about it, we have international events that are intruding upon everyday life. We have national events that are intruding on everyday life. We have local events intruding on everyday life. And then we have, heaven forbid, family events intruding on everyday life. Why am I saying all of this and going back to everyday life? Because life is what happens when you're not paying attention. Plain and simple. I mean, I heard at one point that there is no tomorrow, there is no yesterday, there's only right now. So whatever's happening right now is what's important. And if you miss it, it's gone. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but it's a good way of looking at things in certain things. Because if you're going to prepare for what eventually will be right now, then you won't be spending the rest of your time going, man, I wish I had done that way back when. And losing even more time in that respect. So you want to make a crisis checklist. And by crisis, I don't necessarily mean a, oh my God, the world's ending kind of crisis. I'm talking about crisis that might be for you. Let's say, for example, you go ahead and you know that eventually you're going to be cutting the lawn out back. Okay. And I'm making this super simple. Doesn't matter. You know you're going to be cutting the lawn out back. All right. Well, what happens if you run over a pine cone and it flies out the back and pops you in the leg? Well, that's going to hurt for one thing. Definitely going to hurt, but it can also go ahead and cut you. So if that's the case, have you prepared for it? Have you already made sure that you've got older pants that you can go ahead and wear so that if you get hit, that it's not going to puncture the pants? And if it does puncture the pants, do you have a way to go ahead and bandage it up very quickly? Well, you want to go ahead and, like I said, prepare for these things. So you want to think in advance. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and go out and mow the lawn. Well, I want to make sure that I've got gasoline for the lawnmower. I want to make sure I got a lawnmower to begin with too. So I'm not out there picking it blade by blade to go ahead and get down on my hands and knees and try to mow the lawn that way. That would take a long time. But once I'm out there, I want to make sure I'm dressed properly. I've got the right shoes on. I'm not going around in bare feet. I want to make sure that I've got a rag to go ahead and wipe any liquids off of me, whether it's spilled gasoline or my sweat that happens to come along. I want to make sure that I have bandages, if necessary, just in case I happen to get hit, and cut to do that. And then, of course, I want to be able to make sure that I have a place to go ahead and dispose of anything left over that I don't need. Pardon me. Excuse me, one more. There we go. This all goes onto my checklist. Now, most of the time, it's a mental checklist. I've already thought about it well in advance, and I've done it often enough to where I don't have to worry about whether or not I have these things. I already know, I got bandages and Band-Aids up in the bathroom. That's not a big deal. I can take care of that. Okay, I got my pants that I can go ahead and put on. I got my oversized rain boots that I can go ahead and put on if necessary. That will give me a secondary layer of protection. I got a hat to keep the sun from beating down on me while I'm doing this. I got gasoline. Let's fill it up and go. Whoosh. And go from there. But I didn't let that go to waste. I already prepared in advance for it. So I knew what to do. Now let's go ahead and take the ultimate right now. I was just reading up in an article, I think it was yesterday, and all of a sudden it like this is a huge piece of news. Okay, I'm sorry. It's really comical in many ways, as well as ironic that so many people go, oh my gosh, this is actually coming true. How could we ever think that this would be otherwise? Or, we never would have thought this way even just a month ago that was going on. I'm reading up the article, and they're saying that President Putin is now, from where he was a month ago, he's now being considered a madman, and he's liable to do anything. He's threatening using a nuclear bomb. He's threatening to detonate an EMP over the United States. He's threatening to do all kinds of things that we, quote unquote, never would have imagined. Well, you know what? If you're just now, after the fact, imagining what might happen based upon what they have done in the most recent events, then you're already behind the times. You are already too late. Here's another good axiom for you, okay? You can't get flood insurance after it's flooded. You can't. You can't. Closing the barn door after the horses escaped is fruitless. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can go ahead and say for this here, but basically it boils down to this. If you've let it happen to you, you're the one that's at fault. There's nobody to blame but you, plain and simple. We cannot, as a society, depend on anybody outside of ourselves to take care of us without us doing some of the work. Now, for those of you that believe in a higher power, you can call it God, you can call it the universe, you can call it Jesus Christ, you can call it whatever you want to go ahead and call it, doesn't really matter. There are so many people out there that go, well, I'm going to be taken care of because the sparrow is it doesn't worry about where the next meal is coming from, and so on and so forth. But have you ever seen a sparrow laying in its nest 24 hours a day? No. You haven't. This tiny little bird, tiny little bird, it weighs less than 2 ounces, is constantly fluttering down, looking for worms, scratching for bugs, trying to go ahead and get anything it possibly can to go ahead and keep on feeding itself. It doesn't care about tomorrow. Why? Because it knows that the bugs are gonna be there. It's going to have food. It might have to search a little bit farther out in a field from where it is, but it's going to happen. It doesn't just sit back, relax, and go, I'm just going to go ahead and watch YouTube all day long today because I know that my next meal is going to be automatically prepared for me and delivered to me and set upon my chest so I can go ahead and eat it right here where I happen to be at and not have to do a thing. There's a little something disturbing about that scenario. I mean, really. So what do you do about it? Well, like I said before, you make yourself that checklist. Even if you don't ever use the checklist, you still have it to go ahead and work with. Now let's take it to the business side of things, okay? I'm going to go ahead and use the restaurant example for the moment. But of course, you can go ahead and use this for any business that you want to. The first thing you got to go ahead and do is decide what you want to have, okay? And when you decide what you want, the next thing you got to figure out is if it's been done a million times, and if that million times that it's been done is all within a few blocks of where you're setting up shop. If that's the case, then you might want to rethink your strategy or to specialize yourself enough to where it's going to be completely different than anybody else. Now, I'm going to give away a free example here. Use it if you want to. I'm fine with that. Just make sure you give credit back to me when you do so, please, okay? If you want to go ahead and make yourself some hometown cooking restaurant, okay, and you can call it whatever you want to go ahead and call it. You can call it Adam's Eats. I don't care. And you want to make sure that your food is just plain old hometown cooking. And you got hamburger on the menu, you got chicken on the menu, you got pork chops on the menu, you got steak on the menu, you got lasagna on the menu, you got spaghetti on the menu, and you make it, a nice, decent menu. It's got about 12 or 13 items on it, a couple of different salads and the drinks that you can go ahead and put onto there, and the way to do it. But then you look around and you notice that you have 75 restaurants, all within a 5-block radius, that are doing the exact same thing or something extremely similar to that. How do you differentiate yourself from that? You don't just go outside and say, Adam's Eats, pop, here's my sign, I'm open, come join me, let me go ahead and get you food. And then you try to go ahead and entice people by going, we got the cheapest rates in town. Well, most of the time people are not going to go, oh, cheap, that's great. The only people that really are interested in that are the ones that absolutely can't afford it. So those are the people that you really don't want to have in your restaurant, because they are more than likely going to be the people that are putting up a greater fuss and wanting more work out of you for that limited amount of money that you're actually going ahead and selling your product item for. So let's go ahead and limit this for a second. You got your menu all set up that everybody else is doing. But here's the big thing. You go, I'm going to make this all salt free. I'm using all locally sourced items, things that I can go ahead and get from down the street, that I pick out of my own garden, that I go ahead and do right around here. And there is zero salt at all added into any of this. And the stuff that's brought in, such as any kind of spaghetti sauce you might have to put into it, or oil or flour or anything like that, has got only just what's limited into there. And so you don't have salt upon salt upon salt upon salt upon salt. And if you happen to be placing yourself into a neighborhood that you know is close to a cardiac unit, is close to a hospital, is close to a medical facility that older people who have high blood pressure will see and be able to use, because it's done on the spur of the moment. They walk out of the doctor's office and go, I'm hungry. Wow, no salt restaurant. Let's go there. Then you've made your preparation. You know where you're going. You know what you want to do. You know where you're setting up shop. And you are much more likely to succeed in that aspect. This is a great, great thing to do. But that's because you've already made up your crisis checklist. Your crisis is that you got 75 restaurants all saying the same exact thing. Come eat to me. We got the freshest foods. We got the best, lowest prices. We got the best menus that are coming along. We've got wonderful music and atmosphere. No, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter, because there are people out there that will spend a ton of money at a hole in the wall because it's something they like to eat, over the cheapest place they can possibly find because it's got beautiful pictures on the wall. It happens time and time and time again. You got to think about these things. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time for Tales from the Edge. Welcome back to the show. Tales from the Edge is brought to you by the HRS Foundation, investing in future generations to ensure a better tomorrow. Now, Tales from the Edge is an example, a personal example of people in situations that I've experienced during my path to growing wealthy. Today's story is this: if you do nothing, you're doomed to repeat history. If you do nothing, you're doomed to repeat history. We have heard historians say this time and time and time again, ad nauseum. I mean, really, you can get sick by counting up the number of times that people have said this, both historians and non-historians. But it is so true. It is not cliche. It is an actual fact that if you do nothing, then history is going to catch up to you. Now, here's a great way to go ahead and put this, okay? If you do nothing but lay on the couch watching YouTube videos or the television or whatever it is, and you do nothing but that, you're going to starve. You're going to end up having your systems back up because you won't even get up and go to the bathroom. You're going to end up being very sick. You're going to be obese. You're going to have all kinds of medical issues going on. And eventually, you're going to really, sooner than eventually, you're going to start to stink. Okay? Now, all this has happened before. All this has happened before. And if you think about it, there's a lot of people that go, well, that wouldn't happen to me because I remember, I know when I went ahead and got to start to stinking. That's not true. There's a lot of times that you smell yourself and it smells okay. And somebody else comes along and go, oh my gosh, I can't believe you. How could you even stay in this kind of scenario, of this kind of environment? And even my wife sometimes she's nice and gentle about it. You might think about taking a shower, that sort of thing. But I'm going, I don't smell anything wrong. You get used to yourself. You really do. You get used to what's around you. You get used to the smell. You get used to the taste. You get used to whatever it is that's happening. You get used to it. Now let's go ahead and take these crises that are again happening out in the world that are affecting us locally. Okay. Let's say, for example, we're going to go back between World War I and World War II. World War I and World War II. And I'm going to compare the same activities to what is happening today. Now, there are certain differences. Of course, we have a lot more electronics. We have a lot more in the way of technology and the internet and so on and so forth. But basic day-to-day activities are the same. What are those activities? You have to work. You have to sleep. You have to eat. You have to go to the bathroom. You have to go ahead and move around somewhere. You have to be able to go ahead and prepare these items or yourself to be able to do these things. And that's basically it. Okay. You got to make sure that what you are doing can be done. Plain and simple. Now, going back over 100 years or right at 100 years, Weimar Germany is where I'm looking at right now. They've just come out of World War I. They've just come out of World War I, and they are in shambles. Shambles. The people that are in that country, in Germany, at that point, they're trying their darndest to go ahead and get back on their feet. They're trying to be able to scrape up enough money or something to barter so they can have wheat to grind up to put in flour for their bakes, cakes, whatever, breads or cakes or whatever it is that they're going ahead and doing. They're trying to barter something that they can go ahead and afford to let go so they can have meat to be able to stretch out and get into where they need to go. They're trying to take the things that they know how to do, those skills, and find other useful places for it that will allow them the next opportunity to go ahead and eat. In the midst of all this, we have inflation that is just skyrocketing. I mean, it's like a rocket taking off and literally piercing the atmosphere. That's how quickly it went up. So at one point, the German mark, or the Reichsmark, as it was known at that point, before all of this started happening, even at just before the height of World War I, the Reichsmark was basically a parody of 1 mark to around $1. It was right about the same. Everything was very, very similar. Why? Because it was all pegged to gold to be able to go ahead and do this. Well, Weimar Germany took it off of that peg, and they go ahead and started flooding the economy with all kinds of paper assets, so to speak, or paper trash, if you will. And very shortly thereafter, within even a year to a year and a half, you would hear all kinds of stories about how you have this one old woman who is pushing a wheelbarrow cart that has about 100,000 marks inside of this 100,000 1-mark bills inside of this barrow. It's heavy. She's pushing it. She's going in. She goes into the bake shop to go ahead and barter to get a loaf of bread for these 100,000 marks. She comes back out, and the wheelbarrow's gone. The marks are sitting in the street, but the wheelbarrow's gone because it was worth more than the money. Now, this is happening as we speak, even right now. And so many people are blind to this. They don't think that this could ever happen again. But it has happened over and over and over again in so many places all throughout the world, even in the United States prior to this. Yes, it happened. It happened a couple of times, actually. between Weimar Germany, which is I just happen to be starting right there because it's 100 years ago. It's what happened in fairly recent history, and it's still provable. Okay, it's not where I'm thinking 3, 4, 5 centuries, couple of millennia ago. Nothing like that. I'm talking about most recent history. Okay, so the mark, it went kaput. It was gone. Then we had the then we had other things that were happening. Okay, like for instance, we got through that. We got through the Roaring Twenties. We got through the Great Depression, not the Great Depression, but the crash of 1929 into the Great Depression. And FDR went ahead and basically did the same thing. He went ahead and took gold and said, "Okay, we're going to peg the U.S. dollar to gold. However, only people outside of the United States can own the gold, not the people inside of the United States." And so he kept us in the United States so poor, so to speak. It took 25 years to come out of that depression when it could have been so much quicker in doing so had he just let things alone. Now, 25 years later, they went ahead and revalued the US dollar. And they went ahead and said, okay, it's not worth one piece of gold or a certain amount of gold. We can't quite go ahead and do this. I think at that point it was 1/25 ounce, or 1/25 ounce, or $1 equals 20 $25 equaled 1 ounce of gold is how it went, I believe. And you'll have to check these things for sure. I don't remember the exact amounts. Regardless, this is what happened. So the world went onto this semi-gold standard, but only certain people could go ahead and own the gold. Everybody else was used with this worthless paper money that was going on, or they had poor man's gold, which was silver, that they could go ahead and use, and we're still able to go ahead and do this. Well, we're going to go ahead and stretch it out from there, because what happened next? Well, Cuba came along and started doing the same thing, and they took the money off the gold standard, and their standard of living tanked and went down. It was not because of communism. Then we had other countries in the world that, up to the most recent 2 or 3, we are the most recent right now because we see exactly what's happening when money gets flooded into our system. But the one previous to us, which happened just in the last 10 years, was Venezuela. Venezuela was the richest, literally the richest country in South America, the richest country in this side of the earth, pretty much. They have the biggest oil reserves anywhere, but they're still one of the poorest countries because their government doesn't know what to do properly with their money. And so they inflated it immensely, and their economy crashed. Prior to that, back in 2001, we're still talking 20 years ago, Zimbabwe did the exact same thing. Now, Zimbabwe back in the 80s was called Rhodesia. Rhodesia had a civil war. They decided they didn't want anything more to do with it. They went ahead and set up a new government called Zimbabwe, and they started their own brand new Zimbabwe dollar, which they pegged to gold. They said that our dollar will be worth a certain amount of gold, and it was great for about 25 years or a little bit less. And then back in 2001, they took it off of that gold standard and they started printing up tons and tons and tons and tons of paper money. And everybody that owned gold, they got out of town. They fled like very quickly. And at that point, they were not wanting to go ahead and to stay anywhere nearby, let alone to go ahead and to see what was going to happen. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because everybody that did not have a way out, everybody that did not have a crisis checklist, everybody that did not have gold and silver to go ahead and move about, they didn't have a second passport, they didn't have a place to go, and they thought everything is fine until it wasn't. They repeated history again and again and again. It happened all over the world. And unfortunately, most people are like this. They are so blind to what's going on because they're being so distracted between the latest football game and or crisis and their favorite star who's just happened to have a birthday, and the fact that gas prices have jumped up $1 to $1.50 over the course of 2 weeks versus where they were 2 years ago. Or they have a brand new car, or they got a brand new bed, or something of that nature. It's stuff that they're literally have blinders on. They don't see what's happening around them, and they're going to be the ones that are caught like a deer in headlights. And things, that final ratchet clang, that door's going to slam shut, the lock's going to go ahead and lock, and they will be stuck and can't do anything except what they are told to do. They are doomed to repeat history. And when that happens, and yes, it will happen again at least twice more, when that happens, the door is going to shut. The final click is going to be gone, putting on the shackles on your hands or your feet. And you're going to be told you have to use only this currency in order to survive. And you have to go ahead and shop at these stores. And you can only purchase these type of items based upon what your worth is. You will be told what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and you will be given zero choice whatsoever, except if you don't do it, you'll either be incarcerated or you will die. It's happened before, many times, several times over the course of the past century. It happened at least 3. I know it's more likely 4 to 5 times that has happened all over the world. It's about to happen again right here in the United States, and it's going to happen again in Russia and in Europe here over the next decade, is my understanding. I don't know if that is exactly true, but that is what I'm expecting right now. If you don't do anything, you will be doomed to repeat history. I want you to remember that, because this is going to be super important for you as it's playing out. And for those of you that are going, well, you're just a doomsday person. You've been reading too much of Revelations in the Bible, and you're trying to go ahead and fit whatever it is that's around you into what is happening today. No, that's not the case. Yes, I do read Revelations. Yes, I do compare it with the Daily News, and I see that there's a heck of a lot of similarities, and there's a heck of a lot of stuff that's coming exactly the way it said it was going to happen. And I know, according to the Revelation, what might be coming next because it was written down, and therefore I'm preparing for it if it happens. If it doesn't, I'm better off, because then I've got things that I know I can use in other scenarios. That's what people who are called preppers are all about. And so many people are willing to go ahead and take the ideas of prepping, so to speak, and they will go ahead and make all kinds of jokes and comedy type strips on it. And they're going to be the naysayers. They're going to go ahead and start jeering. They're going to go ahead and start being extremely negative, the naysayers, so to speak, that comes along with it, until they need it. And then they're the first ones in line going, bang, 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 bang. Hey, I need you. I need you. I need you. Or worse, they're going to come up and go, I want that. And yes, that's going to happen again here soon. You are listening to Standing on the Edge. When we come back, it's time to close out the show with What Would Happen If? And welcome back to the show. What Would Happen If is brought to you by DJR Enterprises. Great entertainment when you need it. You can telephone 470-554-2134 to get involved in the wonderful opportunity that is your next event. Today's topic for What Would Happen If is this. I want seconds. I want seconds. Now, this can be interpreted in several ways. Most people will think exactly what it sounds like. I want more of what is there. I want a second helping of what is there. I want to be able to do this again and again and again and again. Okay. But some other people that are not quite so looking at the obvious, and I'm talking about preppers here at this point, they want different types of seconds. They want time. They want as much time as they possibly can go ahead and get. They want seconds, literally, because sometimes seconds is all you have. Now let's go ahead and take a very possible scenario according to what one government official has been recently saying in the news here in the United States. And this is again that article that I was reading yesterday that said that he all of a sudden just figured out that President Putin is a madman and he's threatening to go ahead and send a nuclear detonation over North America, and that's going to go ahead and wipe out the electrical grid because it's going to send this huge electrical impulse, and we're going to be so bad off. All of which is true, by the way. Okay, President Putin has been saying these things, that it is possible to go ahead and send an EMP detonating a dirty bomb or a nuclear weapon in the atmosphere, which will then go ahead and send an electrical magnetic pulse called an EMP that will knock out the American electrical grid. Right now, all that's needed to go ahead and wipe out 100% of America's electricity is by hitting 12, just 12 electrical substations. That's a scary thought. And when you put into thought the fact that the current administration wants to make us rely more and more upon electricity, makes it even scarier that all of this umbrella electrical substations, whatever you want to go ahead and call, are going to be powered by 12 of these points that are super vulnerable to any kind of attack. So a prepper goes, okay, it's possible. Is it probable? Is he going to do it today? Most likely not. Is he going to do it tomorrow? Probably not, but it's kind of high. It's highly unlikely, but it is still possible. Is he going to do it in a week? Is he going to do it in a month? Is he going to do it in a year? Okay, this is how things play out in a prepper's mind. And for those of you that are familiar with the game of chess, it's the same principle. You're thinking 15 moves ahead of time, okay? So if you figure out that he's probably not going to go ahead and detonate a nuclear weapon in our atmosphere for a year, well, that means you've got 1 year's worth of seconds, 1 year's worth of time to go ahead and prepare for something of that nature. If you think it's going to happen tomorrow, you got a lot less time to prepare. So a prepper wants seconds. They want time so they can go ahead and be able to grab what they need at a moment's notice and go from there. Now, for those of you that are going, well, once again, you're being a doomsday type person and so on and so forth. I want to go ahead and explain to you just what I'm talking about here, okay? And this is, like I said, is a very, very, very real scenario. If, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Russia, but if somebody were to detonate a dirty nuclear bomb, and it doesn't have to be a huge nuclear bomb, it could be something just enough to be able to explode in the atmosphere several miles up that will go ahead and cause that electrical grid to drop down. That's the first thing that's going to happen. And there will be no notice about that. We will literally have less than 3 minutes notice if that happens. There's nothing you can do. If you're not prepared for that scenario, there is nothing that you can do. Why? Because anything that is on, any television, any laptop, any computer screen, any phone, any car that's running, anything that has an electrical component that is in use at that moment will be snapped into, will be fried. It will be useless at that moment. Planes will literally start falling from the sky. Not straight down like a rock. They will go ahead and glide, but they'll still be coming down at a moment's notice. They will have zero way to go ahead and figure things out. They will go ahead and have no way to be able to navigate in their electrical normal usage. That's the first thing that's going to happen. the next thing that's going to happen is there's going to be some sort of fallout because there is going to be a nuclear event. Well, it's going to be falling into the clouds. The clouds are going to rain this down, and it's going to be hitting people. Now, it's not going to be like what you saw back in the films in the 1950s, where the nuclear bomb hits the ground, it destroys everything in a 5-mile radius. You can't walk into it. It sends the nuclear radiation into the next 25-mile radius, and people are really severely burned and blind and badly damaged and so on and so forth. That's not going to happen. But people will still get sick. They can get sick enough to where their hair is falling out, where their teeth are falling out, where they're contracting different lung conditions, where they can't breathe properly, or they're coughing up blood, or they might have leukemia because the radiation has then gone ahead and filtered down to their bodies. This is going to be a bad thing. All right. This is going to be a very bad thing. But if it's done high enough and it explodes, the first thing you're going to notice is that, bam, you have no electricity. You can't do anything about it. The next thing you're going to see is that it's going to take several hours to days for this fallout, so to speak, to really start working its way down into the atmosphere. If it's falling into a cloud and it's raining right then and there, you're toast. You're already got things going on. You've got just a few minutes to get undercover to be able to take care of what you need. Okay. If the wind is blowing away from where that event is happening, where that rain cloud is going, then you got a little more time. If you're in a place where the rain's not going to come to you in the next 2 days, you've got a little more time. But if you haven't prepared for something like this, where are you going? What are you doing? Then again, you're pretty much toast. It's not going to work very well for you. So you've got to be able to make sure that you use precious time. You've got to make sure that you got your bug out bag. Again, I'm thinking in terms of prepping right now, but you've got that bag that you can do. It's full of your essentials. It's full of your medicines that you need. It's full of your absolute necessary clothes right then and there. It's got something that you can go ahead and lay your head on if you want to go ahead and sleep. It's got some sort of food inside of there. It's got some sort of fuel inside of there. It's got a blanket or warm clothing that you can go ahead and use to cover up at night. It's got a tarp or a tent that you can go ahead and sleep under to keep yourself out from under the elements. And that will at least go ahead and help you get better and move on from there. But again, if you are using something right then and there, such as your car vehicle, and the electrical grid goes down, bam, that car is going to pretty much stop and crash immediately because you're not going to have any control over it. The battery is still going to be good, but the electrical system will not be good. So for those of you that are listening right now, remember that. Because if you can go ahead and scavenge that battery out of another car, you've got an electrical source that you can plug up into something else for basic light, for basic heat, for basic something other than what you're doing. You can't go ahead and run a refrigerator or a toaster or a hairdryer off of that. Those are conveniences that you're just going to have to go ahead and live without for the time being. But if you've got a small fluorescent or LED light that you can plug up with the battery, well, you've got hours and hours and hours of light that you can go ahead and use from there. If you can go ahead and make yourself some sort of generator that will then allow it to recharge that battery at the same time, then you're even better off while you're doing it. But the first thing you have to do is you got to be prepared. You got to have time, and you got to have the time to do it, and you have to have the time afterwards to be able to take care of yourself at the same time, as well as other people, and get undercover where something like this nuclear fallout is not going to affect you as easily as it would be if you were stuck out in the open. You've been listening to Standing on the Edge. I want to go ahead and give a shout out to my friends watching today. I've got Lee Stroud watching, my best friend, who always goes ahead and pays attention and supports me in doing this, and I certainly appreciate that. Thank you. Sarah Goins also is watching me, so thank you very much, Sarah, for tuning in. My wife, who always goes ahead and gives me wonderful support, and of course, all the rest of you out there in, as we used to say, TV land in doing so. Don't forget, if you want to be a partial sponsor to go ahead and help me support and keep this product going or these types of videos going, $1 is all I need. $1. Just go ahead and send it to the GoFundMe page. It's called Standing on the Edge. If you need more information about that, send me an email at joinmeattheedge. That's double T's, double E's. Join me at the edge, join at gmail.com. You can text me at 470-554-2134, or you can go directly to the GoFundMe page from there. I am also looking into trying to set up a Patreon channel to be able to help out with that. My next show is going to be next Friday, April 1st. It might be a little bit later than 12 o'clock. It might be a little earlier, and it might not be live. I'm going to have to play that one by ear because I'm going to have my grandkids over, and my wife's going to be in training the whole time, which means that everything's pretty much going to be straight up in the air. So it might be delayed. It might be just a pre-recorded message that's going on. Until then, however, remember, expand your awareness. Think of something every day to help you on your own path, and hopefully soon I'll see you joining me on the edge. Have a great weekend.